Okay. Can you start a podcast with me, please? I need something to do.
Pastrnak sent it out in front of Malkin to save. They score! Elias Lindholm looks to the heavens.
Here's a chance. Potter right in on goal. He scores. Oh my! What a move by the rookie.
2-on-1. Pastrnak moving in with Marchand. Get it to it. Score!
The zone. Coyle dances in. Backhand score!
Lindholm right wing corner. Pastrnak is there. He scores! David Pastrnak wins it for Boston.
Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of Bruins Tape to Tape. I am your host this evening, Caroline. It is April 30th. If you're listening to this, yes, the Bruins are still not in the playoffs, but we are still getting together and talking hockey. And what better way to kick off our summer season, so to speak, the first episode without any active Bruin news than having a special guest. But first and foremost, I want to welcome in my fabulous co-host, Maria. How's it going, Maria?
Oh, just grand. I'm actually, no. I mean that sincerely. It's kind of refreshing to sit back and watch a little bit of really good playoff hockey. Even though we don't have a dog in the fight, there's been some pretty epic battles thus far.
It is. I am very highly entertained. It's been an excellent first round. But as I mentioned, for those of you who are not watching on YouTube, we've brought in Professor Mo, friend of the pod, to come on and educate us a little bit. So if you have been following our Substack account, we've got a special little corner dedicated to Mo and his wisdom around all things hockey. So what better way to get ready for next season than to enlighten us ourselves and our fans what a good team is actually supposed to look like. So welcome in, Mo. How is it going?
Thank you, guys. It's great. I appreciate you guys having me on again.
We always love having you, and your articles have been really, really good, really thought-provoking and entertaining.
Good.
Yeah.
Glad that's been working out. They've been fun to write for sure.
Yeah. Highly enlightening. I mean, certainly, I think, among the three of us, we've been fans of the game for a really long time, but at least for myself, there have been elements that I have learned a lot about that I didn't know beforehand. We talk a lot on this podcast about, or at least I certainly talk about it all the time, that the Boston Bruins, it's a team, but it's also like a workplace, right? And everybody has a job, and it could be you have to be the goal scorer, you have to be the playmaker, you have to be the Uncle Nick kind of player. But besides the personalities that you need to have on a team to be successful, there are also actual jobs that have to get taken care of during a game. And Mo's first article is already out on Substack, so you should definitely go check it out. It's tape to tape mk.substack.com. You can read that. It's the forwards philosophy, and he's going to be putting out some more interesting content around this later this summer. So make sure you subscribe so you get that into your inbox so you can get even more detail. But before we dive in, Maria, what has been happening around the rink? Has there been any big news that we might find interesting?
Hot off the presses, just before we started recording, is that Aaron Ekblad has been suspended 2 games by the Department of Player Safety. And in case folks haven't been paying attention to the Lightning Panthers series, the Florida Panthers are playing like their typical rats that they are.
Yes, they are.
Right? And so Ekblad went after Hagel because Hagel knocked one of their guys out, which I don't have an issue with that, right? If you do it cleanly. Now,
right.
the first hit that Ekblad laid on Hagel should have been enough. But then Ekblad doubles down and basically delivers like an elbow to Hagel's chin. Hagel left the game, didn't come back. John Cooper lost his ever-loving mind. Well, he should have, because they didn't even call a damn penalty on the play. It was so egregious, so egregious. So, you know what? It's about time. And, and I know I had said that I had adopted them as my playoff team, but I last night had reached the end of my rope with some of the shit shenanigans that they're pulling. And then the tit for tat between Paul Maurice and John Cooper. We only hit guys that have the puck. You're full of shit, okay? So,
Right.
It was highly entertaining, though, I have to say. It was starting to feel like Inception. How many times are we going back and forth here? Like,
all right.
Oh my God.
Okay. How many times are we going to play this pickleball game? But anyways, that was the big news that hit right before we started recording. Mm-hmm. The other two pieces of news, as we all expected, is that coaches are starting to be relieved of their duties or moving on, however they want to phrase it. But Mike Sullivan has parted ways with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Rick Tocchet has also parted ways with the Vancouver Canucks. So I've started hearing that the Rangers might be interested in Mike Sullivan, which is fine by me, because I have a philosophical issue with having any players, coaches that are related to each other. And for those of you who don't know, Mike Sullivan is Charlie McAvoy's father-in-law. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we even want to recycle coaches again, though?
No, we talked about that on our Discord. I'm over it, Mo. Aren't you?
No.
I mean,
yeah,
it just like the message will be fresh and new, right? Likely for a period of time, perhaps. And then we might find ourselves in the same boat again, where we're getting rid of a coach 2, 3, I don't know. I don't even know if they last that long anymore in the Bruins organization. But what's the shelf life? Should I call Charlie and ask him what the shelf life of the coach is moving forward?
Well, 4 coaches in 15 years is about 5 years a coach-ish. Right? So.
Well, according to Charlie, though, you can't count Bruce Cassidy.
Apparently not.
No.
That doesn't count. I don't know what that was then. 5 years.
Jesus Christ, what are we doing here?
No. I don't even know anymore.
And for those of you who aren't watching playoff hockey, you got to watch playoff hockey, because I tell you, those teams in the West, whoever comes out of the Western Conference going into the next round, they're going to have scars all over them, because those teams are doing some serious battle against each other. And earlier in the week, like every series was tied 2-2.
Yep. So that means ultimately in the West, nobody's going to get through past the first round without 6 games.
Which
is a lot. And quite frankly, a lot of these matchups have been so balanced that I wouldn't be surprised if we see 2 or more game 7s, which you really, I mean, this is completely an uneducated guess, but from my experience of watching, like, game 7s aren't unusual, but they're not common. Like, it's not, you don't have multiple game 7s at this level in round 1. You have a lot of great games, you have a lot of overtime, but
every series in the West could go 7.
They honestly could. They honestly could. Meanwhile, on the East Coast, everyone's going into overtime. So I don't know what that means.
I don't either.
Everyone's playing probably at the end. Everyone will have played the same number of minutes. It's just whether or not it was in regulation or not, quite frankly.
The speculation I've heard from the so-called expert is that whoever comes out of the Dallas, Colorado series should be the ones in the Western Conference Finals. And going to the Stanley Cup. So we'll see. I mean, how much they'll have left by the time they get done with each other. But
who's still
Yeah.
physically standing. That's the thing.
Right.
You never
Correct.
know,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
They could be an
yes.
excellent team. They could be the best team. But if McKinnon goes down, if Sagan is done, if Otter is done, then it
We
doesn't
saw that with
matter.
Boston when Pasta
Right.
got hurt the first shift against Florida.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Mo, are you here to help us or hurt us?
Definitely hurt. I'm going to make you guys feel a lot worse.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Given some of our subject matter here, we're going to find out how really bad the Bruins lines were
But-
this year.
But we got rid of Freddie, so I'm happy.
Yes,
So,
that was your
that's
mission,
all I'm
and I'm
happy
glad.
about. Yep.
Yep.
That was your
No,
mission.
and I was right there. I was right there rooting on.
Yep.
Rooting on with you because, I fell out of like with him, in a relative quick hurry.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So let's talk then about the philosophy of forward lines. Before we kind of dive into exactly what you believe every single line construction should be, what their jobs are, where did you kind of come up with this philosophy and these ideas?
So a lot of this philosophy just comes from watching hockey for the last 30, 35 years. And also, I hate to say it, but playing video games has also kind of helped. Because video games always said your top two lines are your scoring lines and your bottom two lines are your checking lines. And so I've just kind of always had that philosophy just kind of ingrained in me. Growing up, it always seemed, like the Joe Thornton, that jumbo line was always the top line, the scoring line. They didn't really play much defense. And then you got to, the 2011 Stanley Cup, and you had basically the best, most perfect fourth line ever. So it's just everybody, like you said, Caroline, everybody has a job to play. Everybody slots in a perfect world on a perfect team. And it's just one of those things where this basic principle of like line construction and team construction just always comes back to the basics of these are what your guys should do. This is who should do what. Your guys should play the penalty kill or the power play or whoever it is. But if you can formulate 4 really good 4 lines, they'll stack up against anybody else. And in the playoffs, that's how you get mismatches and that's how you win.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Awesome. So let's talk about your first line. So we're going to start out initially talking more, again, philosophically, a little bit theoretically, but we definitely want to then hear who in the past, what Bruins teams, you talk about the 2011 team being so well constructed. Give us some examples too, as you walk us through what this perfect line looks like in the Mo verse.
the Mo NHL 25. So your top line, in my opinion, is obviously going to be at least your best players. It needs at least a sniper, and in my mind, a sniper is someone like Pasternak. He's someone that his job is to score goals. His job isn't to play defense. It's not really to play neutral zone or penalty kill. He's there to get you 50 goals a year, and that's all he does. I know Pasta's knock is, he doesn't play defense and this stuff, but that's your prototypical sniper. Yeah,
I was just thinking that he's been
Is that his job?
and again, he gets shit on in Boston sports talk radio
I know.
for that, which is, again, I try not to pay it any attention, but it infuriates me nonetheless because it's it's just fodder to rile up college.
It really is.
But you are the same buffoons who've been saying for years the Bruins need a sniper. They have one, and then you crap all over him because you expect him to be something that, right? It's not a regular part of his game. If he grows into that aspect of his game, good for him. Good for him. But we want him to put the friggin' puck in the net, right?
Yup. So you definitely want those guys. And then it's going to have to be players that complement that person's playing ability. So typically it's going to be your guys that will get in the zone, get on pucks, forecheck hard, but force turnovers and capitalize on those turnovers. So again, if you're looking at, the 2011 Bruins team, I mean, your top line when they were healthy, you had Luch, Krejci, and Horton, right? Those are three guys. So you've got Luch who's going to get in there and just
He was the truck driver that was
bang
just
everybody.
bulldozing the path for those guys.
Seriously. Yeah. Krejci, who's probably your second man in, getting the puck, dishing it to Horton or whoever. I mean, Peverley was on that top line in the playoffs, and we all know Rich Peverley was kind of crappy, but he played, right? So if you have
He was a good college player.
Oh, like Brown's a good AHL player? Sorry. But you need those guys. And so if you can, and again, if you look at like the Joe Thornton, Mike Knuble, Glenn Murray line, none of them were great, but they played well together and they complemented each other so perfectly that no one wanted to play them. What were they, Maria? Like the 800-pound gorilla line or something, if I remember. It was awesome. Like
beat.
Murray had, Thornton had like 100 assists and Murray had like 50 goals, and it was perfect.
Hence why those guys nearly, ripped Mike O'Connell to shreds when they found out that they had basically escorted Joe Thornton out the back door without even having a conversation with them. But I digress.
Yeah, well, that's another episode, right?
Yeah,
So
We're gonna have old gripes episode this summer.
Yeah. Can we do one of those?
So in my mind, and I know we'll get to it later, but your top line is your best players, your snipers. If you got a Bergeron who can play defense, fine, but I don't think he technically has to. That line has to be there, but they got to be snipers and they got to be your top power play guys. Those they have to be there, because I mean that's how you win, is if you put the puck in the net, and these guys have to be it.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to talk, who on this team, maybe
We'll get there. I was
Where do you wanna go?
I was going to get there. So
walk us through your whole
have
thing. So
do we, in your mind, currently have a top line that fits the descriptors as you have just slayed them out for us?
I would say 2/3 of the top line.
I was thinking,
Yeah, I know.
So,
I was like, I can name them for you right now.
but so Caroline, do you want to get into this specifics or move on to the second line?
Well, let's talk about the whole package and then see just how far short we land.
We fell.
So our second. So tell us a little bit about your philosophy. Then, what's the purpose of the second line?
So your first line, consider it like your elite scoring unit, right? Their job is to score. So your second line is kind of to do both, right? Score, but also go against the other team's top two lines and shut them down. So again, if you think you had Marchand, Bergeron, and whoever else kind of played with those guys, 2011, they had Recchi, right? Recchi was 40 years old and could barely skate, but he played with Marchand and Bergeron, and they were perfect. So you want some consistent offense. Obviously, these guys are your top six, so they need to put the puck in the net. But again, if your top line is doing that, these guys go against the other team's top line and shuts them down. They're the guys that will, kind of grind out the defensemen on the back end of the other team, kind of make them tired. That's always one thing that kind of gets overlooked is kind of leaning on the other team's defense, especially in the playoffs. That's a great way to, win a series, steal a series. That's what Florida does to Boston all the time. They forecheck all the time and put pressure on the defense and make them tired. So
out of you. Yeah,
right.
They're relentless.
Yeah.
Yup. And the way I like to look at it is kind of compare it to baseball, where you've got like a 5-man starting pitching rotation. You don't want all pitchers that are the same. You want a little bit of difference of, people coming at you. So if you've got the top line that's just coming, maybe your second line is going to be, your neutral zone speed guys that will, do the transition game or be a little bit more skilled and a little bit more forecheck. So again, this is going to be like your Bergeron, Marchand, Recchi, those types of players that, play a little bit more defensive minded, but definitely are offensive threats. And
That
then
was
I
going
guess,
to be my question
yeah,
was it sounds like then this particular line is a little bit more defensively minded. Their
Yup.
play takes place in multiple zones. And then
Yep.
I appreciate the example of someone like Marchand because it really kind of solidifies in my mind when it comes to, skill and ability, top six, they're all excellent players. They're all relatively on par in terms of the best at what they do. But when you want to compare someone like a David Pastrnak, at least prior to this season, I would say Pasta or Alexander Ovechkin is this type of player I kind of think
Yep.
where they go to their place and, score their goal, right? So prior to the season, Pasta effectively only really ever, unless he got like a fantastic breakaway, he really went to like his office and he stood there and waited for the pass to snipe that goal, right?
Yep.
Ovechkin, like that's the kind of player that he is, right? He goes to his spot and he scores his goals. Whereas if you think about someone like Brad Marchand, or even I saw this a lot with Morgan Geekie this year, really knowing how to either evade people to get to a place to receive a good pass or to make that critical pass, like get it in, but also figure out how to stop the opposing team before it becomes really the defenseman's problem.
Yep. And I would say, players like Anansi Kopitar probably is like a perfect center line, second line center would be that type of player who plays that 200-foot game. Not necessarily sexy on the scoreboard, but definitely plays a game where he affects the game off the score sheet. That's kind of my hope for like a Patra is to get to that point. I would say, if this team was better, Geekie would be a perfect second line winger or center.
Yeah.
And if Zacha could score again, it would be a good second line. So, but we all know Zacha can't score, so he doesn't count.
Just, we're putting trying to put round pegs into, square. I mean, this is, what you're talking about is building a team, right? Based on what the specific player's skill level is at, where
Right.
we seem to have a management group that is not forcing, but they're not putting players in the right positions
for success
to succeed, or for the overall good of the team to be successful
and themselves and like the player themselves, right? Certainly we saw, I think an exception in Jake DeBrusk when he was put in a position that demanded more of him and he needed that apparently, right? And that worked out really, really well for 2 years.
Yep.
But then you have a situation like with Charlie Coyle, who was always a very reliable third line center, and they had no choice but to call upon him to serve as a center, either in the first or the second line. And he had flashes of when he could do it, but he just didn't have what it took and doesn't have what it takes to consistently be in those two positions. You could fill in, but he couldn't maintain.
But that wasn't his role. And to Mo's point, when you look at, what is distinguishing the criteria of, those that are your first line, those that are your second line, and we'll get to the other lines, is that, in any walk of life, you've got to put people in the roles that that they are capable of handling, where they can garner success. And in defense of players, I highly doubt that, if the coach comes to you and says, hey, Joe Blow, you're playing up on the top line tonight, even though you're a third line player. What are you going to say? No. I'm not comfortable. I'm not comfortable doing that, or vice versa, right? They want to play, right?
Right.
And they want to do what's right for the team because they're team players. But
Yep. And I
Exactly.
I do
So
think
before we dive into the second half of before we dive into the second half
Hold that
of
thought.
the lines, let's just take a super quick word from our sponsor. All right, Bruins fans, if you're thinking about picking up some new gear, now's the time. I'm already planning to grab a fresh Pasternak jersey this fall. Who knows? Maybe he's rocking a new letter on the front. The NHL shop is running tons of season-ending and summer sales right now, including 20% off Fanatics gear. And here's the best part. When you shop through our link in the show notes, a portion of your purchases helps support this podcast. Same gear you'd find at the pro shop, but with way better perks. So stock up, save big, and help keep Bruins Tape to Tape rolling all year long.
The NBA 82 game grind is done, and now the real fun begins. The NBA playoffs are here, and it's time for all the high-stakes drama, clutch moments, and jaw-dropping plays. I can't wait. If you're looking to make the playoffs even more exciting, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered as an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Try placing a bet on your favorite player's performance. Will they drop 30 points, 40, or more? It's your call. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Make it a playoff run to remember with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, and Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. NFL Plus Premium offer available only to new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus Premium terms at nfl.com/terms.
All right, so welcome back in. We're halfway through our forward line philosophy. So, Mo, we've talked about our top six. We've heard that phrase time and time again, top six. Obviously, these are some of your best players, the most skilled. But we've already started to see with the second line that some of the responsibility is slowly shifting away from pure offensive power into more of a multi,
versatile roles.
Yes, role. So where does that put the third line in today's game? Because I want to also hear from Maria your take on how maybe some of this has changed. Because even from what, Mo and I are the same age, so we watched Trap era and Dead Puck era hockey, which was a little bit, had some similarities to the Big Bad Bruins of yore. But let's talk about today. What is the third line today?
Yeah, so for me, this one all depends on the coach's philosophy, and there's probably a couple different routes that you can take. In my mind, this is basically going to be my workhorse line. So this is where a guy like Charlie Coyle is perfect. This is the line that I want to basically grind the other team down and basically just own the game and make them have the momentum. So basically what this is this is kind of referred to as the shutdown line, right? So they're going to be the guys that probably are a little bit more defensively minded than your second line, but they still have to be able to score. So if you look back at 2011, a guy like Michael Ryder was kind of a perfect third line guy. He had that wicked wrist shot where he could almost score from anywhere, but he was also pretty underrated defensively. where Maria, Caroline, you guys probably remember in the playoffs when he basically like played as Tim Thomas and made that save against
Oh my God.
Montreal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No.
So it's yeah.
And
So
he actually scored a game-winning goal as
I
well
know.
in that very same series, to your
Yep.
point. So,
Yup.
um, yeah.
So also I think you could always also use this line as kind of like a developmental line for maybe some rookies. So if you're going to look at a guy like Lysell, maybe this is a better line because not really fourth line because they're really going to get what 8-10 minutes a game. These
Right.
guys are probably going to get 12, 13, 14 minutes a game. So a little bit less responsibility, probably not going to play against the top line, maybe the second, the third, the fourth line, but definitely a line where people can develop. But I think it's going to depend on what the coach's philosophy is and how good the team wants to be, right? I mean, you look at Florida, you got Marchand on the third line. I mean, Marchand's not a third line winger, but that's where he plays because
And you know
that
what I
team is
heard?
awesome.
And Paul Maurice's philosophy to this conversation is his philosophy with regard to that line, Marchand, and I forget who else is on the line with him.
Mhm.
But if they can score 1 goal per series, and these are Paul Maurice's words, they can score 1 goal per series, then they're doing their job. Then they're doing their job in addition to making life miserable because,
Yep.
right, when you're on the road, you don't get the last change. And so
Right.
you need a third line grouping like that from a coach's standpoint where you don't get that opportunity to, get your top guys against the other team's top guys, right? So you've got to have that faith in that grinder line or that defensive, guys that are defensively responsible that have a good chance of winning a faceoff, particularly if the faceoff is in your own end.
Mhm.
Yep. And that's where guys like Coyle were great.
Yeah.
In 2011, you had Kelly, who was a great third line center who won the faceoffs, did the grinding, was a penalty kill specialist. I mean, he was what you wanted. So it all depends where your team's at. Use them for a developmental line. You could use Lysell and a couple other guys on that line, but for me, it's got to be probably one of your better skating lines as well. People
Mhm.
that can keep up, and I mean, like
Well,
you
that
said,
be the other team's face, right?
right,
Like
right,
that,
right.
that how much does this line in particular maybe get not necessarily changed up in terms of personnel, but changed in how they're used and how often they're used based on the opposing team and
Yeah.
potential lines that happen there? Is this one that could the amount of time fluctuate to some degree, or is it less about any of that and that's just your particular job and you go out when we need you for that particular purpose?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and it probably depends on probably a bunch of different factors, but the way I see it is this line's probably also gonna have more of your like penalty kill specialists. So if
Okay.
your game is
Right,
getting
more
chippy
defensive.
and so these are probably, in a less than perfect world, you don't have Bergeron or Marchand who's gonna kill penalties. So you've got these guys, right? That
Mhm.
are your Chris Kellys or, whoever else we've got that I can't think of. But maybe in a perfect world, Johnny Beecher becomes a third line guy if he can develop. He wins the faceoffs. He can do penalty kill. Maybe they're your second power play unit, depending.
Wasn't
But
Mark Castella killing some penalties too before he
He
had all
was.
of those
And
I think so. Yeah,
injury?
I believe he
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
yeah. And I mean, we'll get into the fourth line, but I think this line, your third and fourth lines, like your top two lines, you want them to kind of play off of each other. And again, it's going to determine what style of play that line ultimately plays, right? You've got dump and chase, you've got cycle, you've got the low to high game, you've got, the neutral zone transition. So it really depends who the players are and what that coach's philosophy is. I mean, if you go back to Monty, his whole thing was getting the defense activated. And that's why they were so good that first year, because no one saw it coming and no one knew how to defend it. Then everybody knew what they were going to do, and they could stop it. And the Bruins got
And they no longer
older and
had
slower.
Bergeron
Yeah.
and Krejci.
Yeah.
That
That's
also
the double
doesn't
whammy.
help.
Minor details.
Right. So
Yeah.
I think again, it's like the starting pitching kind of comparison is you don't always want all 4 lines to play the same, and you don't want your bottom 6 to always play the same, because then the other team can adjust and they know what's coming and they know how to beat the forecheck or what they're playing. So if this line still definitely has to score, so you just can't put a whole bunch of rookies or a whole bunch of grinders out there, which is why a guy like Ryder and Kelly kind of worked, because they could do both. So if you want, we can get into the 4th line, because it kind of segues into it, right? And I mean, for me and Maria, I don't know if what you think, because you've kind of seen like the big bad Bruins, but this is your energy, your physicality line. This is the line that basically goes out there and kicks the other team's ass, right?
To be the
had
enforcers.
I had never seen in all my years of watching hockey, and the game obviously has changed and evolved, right? There weren't, analytics and specialists, and, you had your guys on the bench. You had, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, and that's how your coaches, for the most part, rolled them out. And, to some degree, I don't want to say the game was, it wasn't as strategic, and that's no disrespect to what was happening back in those days.
Right.
But man, that low line was
I know.
Enforcers.
I
They
had
went out
never
just to
seen
beat you up.
anything like that, even in the days of the big bad Bruins, because not only did those guys kick ass, which the big bad Bruins did, but they could also, when needed, be counted on to score a goal. Not only did they grind down the opposing team, and their role was, don't get scored on. Really, I mean, short of that, don't get scored on. And they were brutal to play against, which was a thing of beauty to watch back then.
They were all very well. I guess Thornton wasn't fast, but I mean, Paillet and Campbell were fast. They were fearless. I mean, didn't Campbell break a leg and stay out there blocking shots?
Yes, he did.
So,
Yes, he did.
Penalty kill.
Yeah.
A penalty kill on one leg, and I was in the building for that game, and the entire building was on their feet, because we all knew something awful had happened to him. But the fact that he stayed out there on one freaking leg, basically, and kept blocking shots. So,
it's just perfect.
That's that. And again, you can't rewind the clock, right? But when you're looking at somewhat of a blueprint and a philosophical approach to how you want to build, a sequence or a series of lines, to me, that 4th line, that is a blueprint that I think a lot of other teams have picked up on and tried to replicate and duplicate and develop and mirror.
Yeah.
I'd agree. And didn't Marchand start as a 4th line winger?
He did.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, a lot of them will as
he
well,
did.
right? They're going to, as a way to develop them, as a way to check, like, see what do they
See
have.
what you got, right? Because honestly, and again, no disrespect, but your 4th line is likely not going to be seeing the same amount of ice time as your 1st and 2nd lines, in theory, right? And so, it will give you a glimpse and a window is, can we trust these guys in the situation that we're putting them in as a 4th line? Can we trust them? Can we trust this player to make the right decision with the puck?
Yeah. And so actually one thing that you guys have brought up a few times, and I just want to make sure that we touch on for, again, some of our newer listeners or, newer fans to hockey, because this year has seen such an explosion in hockey fandom. you know, when we're talking about these different lines, first of all, the minutes that get played, right? So when you have your top lines, they're typically going to be seeing 20, 23 minutes, maybe 25 if
I
there's
mean, I think you want to keep them, under the ideally, because if not, you're going to wear them out, right?
Right.
They're out there for their regular shift. They're out on penalty, on power play.
Right.
But, on average, and again, I'm just guessing. I don't have
23
anything.
minutes.
About
Yeah.
20 minutes.
20
yeah.
minutes, I think, is
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
is
And then
is
so for your second
decent.
line, it might then end up being probably closer to 18 minutes
18-ish. Yeah.
Yeah.
and then you then start to see a little bit of a drop off, because I think I would expect a third liner to be getting somewhere maybe around 14-ish minutes. And then, like you said, a fourth line is actually going to be seeing the least amount of ice time, like a significantly less ice time, like less than
Single
10 minutes.
digits. Yeah.
And some nights it's single digits.
Maybe 11,
right?
but
Yeah, 10,
Yep.
10 to 11 but
minutes.
some nights it's single
Right.
digits, right? If
Right. They might not need them, right? It all kind of
Right.
depends on what the need is. And so the other thing, the other question that I wanted to put out there is, when coaches are looking to send out certain lines, right? Because, like, to your point, Maria, it's not that way anymore, where it was just like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Like, I mean, they don't do it that way anymore. There's a lot more strategy involved.
matchups.
So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Presumably you're sending out your top two lines based on maybe who's also out there at the same time or who's coming up. So how do coaches know when to send different lines out on the ice? Like, who's the first line being paired up against? Are they out there at the same time as the other team's best line? Or is the other team sending out, their third line? Is there any kind of predictable pattern or rule of thumb when it comes to that? Or at least in your philosophy, in the Mo-verse? What would be your philosophy for how you send your lines
I don't
out?
want to answer from up, but there may be instances, right, when you start the game and you're first line against first line, right? But we have seen those instances where, for whatever reasons, because say the second or third line had a particularly good game the night before, coaching staff or coaches rewarding them, or right. So there's
hometown debut,
the home or whatever the case may be, right? And particularly on home ice, because
right,
as the home coach, you can pull them off the ice quick if things aren't going, and then right, you've got your third line out there against their first line, but if things aren't going well, you pull them off the ice and you throw your first line back out there. So I don't know that there's necessarily any more kind of a rhyme or reason that coaches use, other than they want to try to get the best matchups.
right?
yeah. I mean, probably the biggest rule of thumb is, like, after an icing and it's the other team's fourth line, you put your top line out there. I mean, that seems to always be the case. I think when the Bruins won the cup, they always started the fourth line to get that energy, to get that kind of building going. So if you've got a line that you can
and
count
you knew
on,
they were going to throw a big hit, right?
Yeah,
you knew that they would throw a big hit, and they would do it even at away games too.
Yep.
Claude had so much faith in that line that he was not opposed, to giving them a start here or there to just send a message. This is going to be a long night for you.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And I think sometimes it'll also be maybe the coach does players and not so much line matchups. Because I think you'll always see Carolina and Brindamore would always put Stahl out there when there was a defensive zone face-off, because he'd pretty much always win it.
Yeah.
Or you've got Bergeron when he was playing, he'd always take the defensive zone draws. It looked like the Bruins were putting Beecher out there quite a bit to win a draw. So it's going to depend a lot on the situations. And then, especially in the playoffs, you'll kind of see who is matching up well against who and maybe who's not. And that's always the biggest thing is when you're the away team, you got to change first so the other coach can basically, kind of match up against you, which is why that home ice is just critical.
It is critical. Yeah.
But I mean, probably when Coyle was really good, when it was like, what was it, the Coyle Hall line, they were always going against the other team's third line. So if you've got an upper, like a higher level third line, put that against the other team's third line, you've created a great mismatch, and you're probably not giving up any goals or opportunities. I mean, that's when Coyle, Frederick, and Smith, when that line first started, they were unstoppable.
Yeah.
So it's all going to depend on, matchups, who you're playing. I think the biggest thing to think about is just where the game is at, what period, what situation. And then usually you can kind of dictate and assume, all right, the top line's coming out just because even if they were just out there, or, the fourth line, sometimes you'll see the fourth line go down and force the goalie to freeze the puck so they can get off the ice and the top line gets an offensive zone faceoff. So it's little things like that is kind of fun to watch the game. Kind of like those little instances. And that really sets like the good from the okay teams apart.
So I think we know for the most part the vacancies that we have.
Everything but Pasternak.
Yeah. But my question is actually, now we're only talking forwards because I know you have opinions about the defensemen, and we will talk about defensemen in another episode.
Okay.
What forwards that we have left are actually not in the right spot, that maybe they should be somewhere else based on what we talked about?
Put your coaching hat on, Mo.
Yep.
And tell us who would be on the first line with David, because we know David Pasta is your number one. Okay.
Yeah.
First and foremost, your number one. Who
should get demoted?
Yeah. Well, all right. Let's think about this. So you've got Pasta for sure.
Yep.
I would think the chances of Geeky coming back are probably pretty good. So let's just assume you've got Geeky and Pasta as your 2/3 of your top line. So I think Geeky can play center, but he was playing on the left side for the most part, right?
Yeah.
Which seemed to suit him because it was kind of his offside, so he could do those one-timers pretty easily.
Yep.
I did like the Lindholm at center option. I think that forces Lindholm not to have as much pressure on him to produce points. He can kind of, I don't want to compare him to, but he can take like the Bergeron-esque route where, we'll take 60, 70 points from him, but as long as he can win face-offs, be the catalyst that starts the offensive zone kind of pressure and momentum by winning the draw, but also play that 200-foot game, you just let Kiki and Pasta cook, and who cares? Outside of that, if you want to get really, really, really funky and weird, you put Kiki and Pasta and you pair them with Lorai. I'm just
I told you we're not talking about defensemen.
No, but Lorai.
We're not talking about defensemen. We're not talking about
forward. We're going to get to that in the next episode, Mo.
All right. But he's a forward now, so he counts. But I think if you're the guy that has to get off the top line is Zacha. It's over. That experiment is done.
Yep.
His defensive game doesn't make up for the fact that he can't score. Even when the net is wide open, he just misses the net. Yeah. So I think your top line has to be, at least right now, it's probably Geeky, Lindholm, and Pasta. I think unless they sign like a Tavares or another, or if they want Geeky to be center and they signed a big time left winger, I mean, it's got to be those three going into training camp, and they've got to play together at training camp.
Well, Don told us that the focus was going to be at the wing position. So I don't think they're going to be doing anything of significance at that center position, which is mind-boggling to me. Still haven't filled these gaping holes, but what the hell do I know? Anyways, so
I get it. I mean, I'd rather the Bruins focus on winger than center. I think down the middle they could get away with it as long as they actually got like another couple top scoring wingers. I think they'd be okay.
Do you
I mean,
think Zaka should stay on that second line then? Like you said, he's defensively, he's good. He's fine. He's just the offensive. Or does he better align with your philosophy for the third line?
I think he better aligns my philosophy of trading him. So, I mean,
well, I guess that's an option. So basically, we're stuck with what we have. It's not it's not like it was so cut and dry with Charlie Coyle obviously being mismatched in his roles and the expectations of him, or Trent Frederick, where they kept trying to make him be some more of a mid-six center. And when you've said he really belongs on the fourth line.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get some fresh people in that they can then miss position.
Yeah. I think the Bruins have the makings of a good fourth line and I would say a very good top line, right?
Yeah.
So you've got Geeky, Lindholm, Pasta, and then your fourth line, if you've got Kostelic already down there. So he's going to be a solid fourth line guy. He'll probably fill that Gregory Campbell type role. You've got Beecher, who is an RFA, but I would be very surprised if they don't bring him back. I mean, he's 24.
Kepke's the wild card about whether or not they'll bring him back. But
yeah, I don't really care about Kepke. I mean,
I don't either.
I would let him go.
Yeah.
I think Lauko would be another really good, but if you're trying to save cap space, I think a guy like Riley Duran is a really good fourth line option. I mean,
well, don't forget Lauko is league minimum pay as well, and he has a lot of speed, so he does have that energy piece.
Right, he's an RFA, so he'll get a pay bump. I think he's making about $788 now. He'll probably make what Kostelik's making, it's like 1.5, probably. I mean, my favorite fourth line was Steen, so I kind of want like another Steen type, so I could see Duran being that guy, because speed, forechecking, just a lot of that stuff that shows up off the score sheet. So when it comes to your second and third line, I don't really know what the hell's going to happen.
We have nothing left.
You got Middlestat. Middlestat's okay. I don't know where he slots, but I think he could be a third line guy pretty well. You've probably got Lysell, who I think could be a decent man. You want him to be a second line guy so bad, but he's got to play with a guy that also can kind of match his speed and creativity. So I don't know if a guy like Patra, if they think he's NHL ready, if you put him in at the second line role, but then you've got Patra and Lysell, who I don't really want them going up against a lot like Austin Matthews and those guys. They'll just get
I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that.
So I mean,
and they've got to address their secondary scoring, right? And to me, maybe this is overly simplistic, but that comes from your second line. So you've got to go out and get some proven. If you're going to focus on wingers, then you've got to go out and bite the bullet and get yourself a proven NHL commodity who's going to give you 25, 30 goals with your eyes closed. I mean, I just don't know how you're going to sustain any success if you don't address your secondary scoring needs or lack of it.
We need another Morgan Geeky. We need to copy and paste him. Winger gave us their 30 goals. Like, we just need another guy like him. But
I wish.
So we're going to wrap this up. But we want to thank you, Mo, for coming on the show to share your philosophy of forward lines. If you want to read more in depth and see some more specific examples, again, check out our Substack where Mo has already published that article. And make sure you like and subscribe. And he will be back in our next episode to talk about defense. So,
Yay.
as always, go Bees.
Go
Go
big.
Bees.